Hello and welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. My name is Laura Bradburn and I'm joined as always on this Friday by Tony Haggerty. How you doing, Tony?
I'm very well, Laura, very well. Just first I wanted to say, do not adjust your set with the shirt. It's just temporary interference, all right? Yes, not trying to rival Russell at all, just trying to see what I hadn't worn in my wardrobe. So that was the first one to mind.
Dearie me. But as you may notice, we are a man down. The three amigos are but two, for now anyway. Jim is having some technical issues and will hopefully be joining us at some point within the next couple of minutes. But until such times as that happens, we'll carry on. We've got a lot to discuss today. We've got obviously my new little game show game. I'm doing my Les Dennis, if you will, and got a wee quiz going on Twitter. So we're going to reveal first of all who that player is that you had to guess from the career stats that I put up on Twitter last night. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Celtic representation in the Scotland squad for the Euros, and David Turnbull specifically, as you can see in the banner, what that means for Scotland that he's in the squad, what it means for Celtic over the next couple of years that hopefully we can build the team around him. And then finally to close out, a wee bit of nostalgia, Tony. I know how much you love that. A wee bit of a look back. 18 years ago today, Seville. Can you believe that?
I might cry at that thought. But yeah, I'll fill you in.
We'll get into that anyway. But yes, so to reveal for anybody watching, plenty of folk on Twitter got the answer right. The answer was Darren Jackson. He was the man who played for Meadowbank Thistle, Newcastle United, Dundee United, Hibernian, Celtic, Coventry City, Heart of Midlothian, Livingston, St Johnstone and Clydebank. Tony,
yes.
The response when people realised it was Darren Jackson was shall we say, mixed. What are your memories of him as a Celtic player? What are your thoughts of him?
I think Dan Jackson's one of these guys that's more remembered for something that happened during his Celtic career rather than his Celtic career.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when he got the water on the brain.
Mm-hmm.
He was out for 3 months. But what I loved about Dan Jackson was that quote that said, I could have been at any club in the world, but I would never have been looked after any better.
Yeah.
And the love that he got from the Celtic supporters at that time, and the love that he got from the club, and he nursed him through a very worrying time in his life and his career.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes that strikes a chord with a lot of players, you know, who maybe don't make their mark at the club.
Yeah.
You know, because Darren Jackson was a decent footballer, but let's be honest, he was brought in to partner Henrik Larsson.
Yeah. I think the thing as well that people forget as well is that water in the brain thing happened to him. I was watching an old report last night on YouTube, and the first headaches that he got was on the 26th of August in the year that he signed, and he'd only signed in the summer, so he didn't actually start a game for Celtic until he came back in the November or something like that, or December. So you know, it's not as if he had a chance to get his feet under the table and then sort of that happened to him. He was fighting a huge battle on and off the pitch from the minute he walked through the doors.
And I think my abiding memory, I think he scored in his comeback game, didn't he?
Yes, Aberdeen it was. Yeah,
Aberdeen at Pittodrie, and he ran to the Celtic supporters, and it was just a beautiful moment. You know, everybody has one of these kind of moments, and I think that was Darren Jackson's moment, a kind of redemption moment where all the Celtic supporters gave him the love that he probably craved and wanted as a Celtic player, you know, and he got that in that instant. And I think that's why he remembers his time fondly, the way he was treated by the club and the way he was treated by the fans. I mean, the fans will be the first to admit and say, wasn't he the greatest player? But when something like that happens, it kind of gives you a perspective on life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you know, but Dan Jackson was a decent player. I think he scored about 50 goals and 170 appearances for Hibs, something like that. You know, the Hibs fans loved him. Then he committed the cardinal sin of signing for Hearts. But my own dealings with him as an agent after he hung up his boots were very cordial, and he was a cracking lad. He was a cracking guy, and if he was to ever come on the pod, you would find that out for yourself. He's a decent fella, and you know, it just, some things don't work out, and it just didn't work out for Darren at Celtic. And not through external factors.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to ask you obviously, I mean, it was probably very early on, even if you had, I don't even know if you had started your journalism career at that stage, but there was that famous rumour going round that obviously was Wim Jansen's first signing and that he was potentially signed off the back of videotapes. Now, it was a scandal, the rumour at the time. I'm sure it's a lot more common nowadays than it was back then, given technology, but do you know if there's any truth in that rumour, or was he scouted in any way? I don't even know.
I couldn't be honest and tell you. I don't particularly know, but I mean, I think Raphael was certainly signed on a DVD compilation.
Yes.
I mean, people certainly know that.
With the added tax of the one Brazil cap, which apparently was a whole sort of thing that they were deliberately doing in Brazil to get inflated prices.
It wouldn't surprise me if Darren Jackson was maybe signed on the back of videotape technology and evidence, but I can't confirm that or say yay or nay to that because I don't actually know. But I think if you were looking at him then, he was a player that was doing well at another club in his afternoon before, maybe a person of interest. But when you've signed Henrik Larsson, you need to pair him with somebody good, and Darren Jackson might have been good, but he wasn't in that class or that bracket. And, and that's why it never really happened for him, so.
Few were. Jim, you're back with us. How you doing?
Do you know? No.
Oh, got you now. Yep.
Yeah.
Still having some technical issues, but we'll crack on with that.
Again.
Lewis McLean on Twitter said that he went to his return game after illness driving up north. He says Dingwall, but I'm sure, like you say, it was Aberdeen. It says he'd been looking for a people carrier earlier in the day, and the salesman asked him if he wanted to loan it for 24 hours to trial it out. So he ended up driving him and 7 other Celtic supporters up the road to watch Darren Jackson's return. So wee stories like that always make me giggle. There's wee memories that stick in your brain about games, and it's absolutely brilliant.
I read that because then somebody asked him if he bought it, and he said, "No chance it was blue," didn't he? That was his addendum to that. If he's still further down, and I burst out laughing. That's brilliant, so, yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. There's Paul back in the background saying Fergus McCann had a signing policy where every player had to be scouted live. The only player for whom the rule was broken was Harold Bratback. And it's funny, actually, one of the reports I was watching last night was Darren Jackson scored his first comeback goal, but he'll have a competition for his place when Harold Bratback signs from Rosenborg in the coming weeks. And I was thinking to myself, my God, God bless you, Henrik Larsson, for having to deal with that. But
Well, I always say that Harold Bratback didn't miss when it mattered.
No, he did not.
For all people can say was this, that, and the next thing, he's still remembered as a man that scored the clinching goal alongside his partner Henrik in the game against St Johnstone that stopped the other 10. So he'll always be fondly remembered as Jim will vouch for. Like Bratback himself, so don't have a word against him, So
no, and I think that's the thing. Talking about Darren again specifically, is people can say what they like about his footballing ability. They can say what they like about whether he was that famous phrase of a Celtic class player that we like to throw around, even though we don't really know what that means. But at the end of the day, he was part of the team that stopped the 10. Yeah. He was part of a league-winning team that did something that many teams had tried over the previous decade to do and hadn't managed. And
I tell you something else, he was very proud to be part of that team.
Yes.
He spoke very fondly of his time in it, and enjoyed his time at the club, despite the fact that it didn't go particularly well for him. But and so I would never speak ill of Darren Jackson. People can think what they want, but he was a decent footballer. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you sign good footballers and it just doesn't happen. But he was always very kind and very cordial when I had any dealings with him, and always spoke very highly of his time at Celtic. So you can't ask for anything more than that, really.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you can you can be a very good footballer and just not fit with a club. I mean, we signed. I always remember us signing Juninho, and although he was in his later years, I was very excited by it because he was one of these players that was kind of one of my favourites to watch down in England growing up, and I thought he's going to rip it up here, and for one reason or another it just didn't work out. But there's no denying his footballing ability, so you just have to go with it. But we'll get Jim's thoughts on Darren Jackson if and when he manages to join us again, because I know he's got an interesting story about having met Darren once a couple of years ago, and I'd really like to hear more about that when we can. But in the meantime, we will move on to other topics. So one thing I wanted to cover today, Tony, was the relatively high contingent of Celtic representatives in the Scotland squad this year. Considering, we've not had the best season by our own standards, there's a decent whack of Celtic players. So you've got Greg Taylor, Jack Hendry, although he's on loan at Ostend, Callum McGregor, David Turnbull, Ryan Christie, James Forrest. And if you want to throw them in, Stuart Armstrong and Kieran Tierney from years gone by as well. Quite encouraging for a Celtic fan to be seeing that and seeing that representation. I know I would get behind Scotland no matter what, but we all know the history of the Scotland team and that Celtic are often underrepresented in these situations. So it is encouraging to see a healthy Celtic contingent in there.
Of course, I mean I'm a massive Scotland fan, regardless of who plays for the national team. But yeah, I mean, as you touched on there, I mean it's been a pretty dire season, but there's strong representation from Celtic Football Club going to the Euros, and not that you needed an excuse to support Scotland, but you want to see those boys do well anyway. But you want to see the team do well, but it just gives you an extra impetus when you're supporting. And as you say, there's others there as well that have played for Celtic, like Armstrong and Tierney, obviously. So there's a big presence there, and I think that carries over from Rodgers' time when a lot of the guys, when Strachan was playing, he played a lot of those Celtic players because they were winning and they had a set formation. There was at one point, I think there was 6 or 7 Celtic players in the Scotland team, wasn't there? So, it bodes well. So, yeah, I'm happy to see that. But I'm also happy to see, and I'm very happy to see the likes of Turnbull in the squad.
Yes.
My thoughts on Turnbull. I think he's a fantastic footballer, and he's had his bedding in season. And I think this season, or the season to come, you will see the best of David Turnbull. I certainly hope so.
Yes, I hope so as well. Before we move on to talk a little bit more about that, Jim, you're back with us. Are you doing good?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, can hear you now. We're back. We're back in business.
Can you?
Business.
Good.
Yes.
What have I missed?
Well, we were going to get your thoughts on you missed out on the majority of the Darren Jackson chat, but I know you had an interesting wee story about having met him a couple of years ago at an event, so I'd love to hear a bit more about that and how you found him to interact with.
I never met him. No. He was in a photograph with me. That's a different thing altogether.
Oh, right. Right, okay.
Different thing. But he's I'd say he's definitely one of the good guys, is Darren Jackson. I don't know what Tony said there, but the thing. I mean, I think when I was thinking about this, once you give us a homework last night, I had to go away and think about this Darren Jackson. I think there's 4 aspects to it. I was thinking in terms of Darren Jackson. The player action when they actually signed for Celtic, his illness, and what did they actually do for Celtic in that season? In terms of the actual player themselves, I mean, to play for Scotland in the World Cup finals against the best team in the world, the opening game in front of billions of people, that's an astonishing thing for any football player. I mean, look at this. The fantastic players of the past, the Jinky Johnsons, the Jim Batchers of this world, never played in the World Cups, and he played against best team in the world, first game in the World Cup. Brilliant. Good player, never gave up. He's one of these guys, when he played for the other team, you absolutely hated him. He would chase balls down, chase low causes. He's one of those kind of guys. Played mostly for Hibs, but was a big Hearts fan apparently. When he signed for us, what did we think? Unwhelmed? Tony, was that fair at the time? Yeah, because I think with such a big season coming up, we'd be such a big season coming up, and we were looking for a kind of big statement. We were looking for a big signing because across the phenomenal team. Gascoigne and Laudrup, Alberts and all these guys. They spent the guts of about 14 million quid on 4 players over that summer. So we were looking for a big sign, and we got Darren Jackson. So I underwhelmed was the reaction from the fans. In terms of what happened to his illness, I mean, I think as I've always 90% of being a top footballer is all in the head. It's all psychological. And if you get a bad injury, that's really difficult to come back from. But he went through, unbelievable to come back to actually play football in the first place. He came back after, was it 2 or 3 months, Tony? He came back, something like that.
3 months.
3 months he came back. What did he do for Celtic? He didn't make goals in that season, but he scored vital goals. I mean, we lost the first 2 games of that season, and the third game was up at St Johnstone, 1-0 up, and then he scored the second goal. Fantastic goal, and there was a game a few months after that against Aberdeen, up at Aberdeen. He scored the second goal in a 2-0, and there was a game, I think his third goal of that season was Aberdeen again at Celtic Park. We're winning, maybe 5-6 minutes to go, he pops up and gets the third goal. So they were vital goals in the greater scheme of things. And
Jim,
during that season, actually,
I think we're going to drop out and try and get you back in. It's still breaking up pretty badly, so if you want to try one more time, we'll give that a go and we'll crack on in the meantime. I think what Jim raised a few good points there. The same as we were saying, Tony. You know, Darren Jackson achieved a lot more in football than a lot of players, and I think that's to be respected. He brought up the opening game of France 98. This is obviously going to be a Scotland squad that's in the first latter stages of an international tournament since that time. Amy thankfully reminded us all that she has never seen it in her lifetime, and that made me feel pretty old, I have to say. Talking about David Turnbull that you touched on before, do you think, even though he's a late addition to the squad, do you think he could potentially have an influential impact now that he is in the squad?
But before we're going to talk about that, I got a brilliant story about France 98.
Brilliant.
My pal worked for the marketing department of Snickers, and he phoned me one day, and I was working for the local paper in Paisley, which I just happened to christen the Paisley Gazzetta dello Sport. It was a Paisley Gazette, and he phoned me and said, "Can you write me World Cup questions?"
All right.
What for? He said, "They're going to appear on the Snickers bar." I said, "Okay." He said, "Money you wanting?" He said, "As many as you can get." So I sent him 1,000 questions. Right? And I was going to France to watch the Brazil game on a big screen, and we're going through the Channel Tunnel, and he said, "We're not watching it in the big screen." I said, "All right, okay." And he handed me a ticket for the game. He said, "That's your reward for writing all these questions." And I was dressed in a Brazil top, a See You Jimmy hat, a kilt, and a pair of gazelle. And I appeared on Japanese TV saying the Le Coupe du Monde, pour tout le monde, and all that, which is the World Cups for everybody type thing. And and I sat beside a guy who was from Slough, and he was saying things like, "Come on, Scotland, give us a goal."
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, and so when John Collins scored the penalty, me and my friend were rolling about the tarmac and absolutely filthy. and I turned to this guy, and he's looking at me as if, yeah. And he turned and he said, "Who did you get your ticket from?" And I said, "Never you mind." I says, "My friend," says, "high places," says, "works for Snickers." Turned out my pal was the guy's boss. You couldn't make it up.
Oh, like, my goodness.
Like, "Ryan?" I'm like, "Aye, Ryan Sandilands."
Of all the places you could have ended up.
Yeah, we were like 8 rows from the centre circle. It was just absolutely brilliant experience. Wonderful. Wow. As Jim said, Darren Jackson played in that game, you know, so it was one of those, as you say, it's kind of lifetime ambition, seeing Scotland kick off the opening game of the World Cup, seeing John Collins score the penalty, and then obviously losing the manner which we did. It was just a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Far too many positive and negative Celtic connections to that, with John Collins scoring the penalty, and then I think Tom Boyd scored the OG, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. But feeling you'd been robbed against Brazil, you know, they'd got off with one. But yeah, I mean, it's just that was just something that was surreal, you know. And he said he never told me that I had a ticket because I would have just bugged him for weeks and weeks and weeks. You got it in your hand, is it in your hand? He said, so that's why he waited till a couple of hours before we'll kick off. But
that's absolutely brilliant.
So in response to Turnbull, I would love to see Turnbull be unleashed at Euro 2021. Honestly, I just think he's got it. I think he's a footballer, and I just think the more he plays in big games, the more he'll get used to it, and he'll take that mantle on. Because I think so highly of him, and I say that because as a working journalist, I watched Turnbull very early at Motherwell and realised Motherwell have got a diamond here. So when he signed for Celtic the first time round, I was really happy, and then when it all went pear-shaped with the injury to the back, I was sad for him because he's a lovely fella as well. He's a really down-to-earth, grounded kind of boy, you know. And I thought his world's collapsed. So I never ever thought that he would go back so quickly. And then to play the way he has for Celtic, and bearing in mind you say that some players come in and hit the ground running, others don't. He had to bide his time, you know, and he probably knew he was a talented player and he could contribute. And he's contributed bits and bobs this season. But I think there's enough there to know that you know a footballer when you see one. And I think Turnbull's a terrific footballer and would be a better footballer with better players around him and being able to go and dictate play. And you know, he's got a lot in his armoury. He can take a decent set piece. He can score goals from distance. He's got a great passing range. You know, and I've never actually seen him make a tackle because he never really has to, because he always seems to have the ball and space and his time. And, you know, so I really do. I rate him highly, and I'd love to see him experience playing in a major championship for Scotland, just so that he gets used to that big game atmosphere and that kind of pressure and thrive on that.
I think. Sorry, my phone's ringing. Everything's going wrong today. No, I think the Martin the boy on Twitter there has said that regardless of all the signings that we need to make, there is a need to tie Turnbull up specifically for Celtic going forward, because what you're going to see is, I think, say for example he gets his chance at the Euros, we've seen it plenty times before, somebody shines on a stage of that size and the suitors are soon after them very quickly, so that's something that we need to do, not just from a financially responsible point of view, but my opinion is we need to try and build the team around them, surely, regardless of where other people go this season, who we bring in, who goes out the door. Surely he can be the fulcrum of certainly the attacking part of the team, you would think.
And we spoke about that before, about building a team. Turnbull is the kind of player you would build your team around, and also as well, he was such a talented boy. He stayed at Motherwell, dedicated himself to his craft, and earned his move to Celtic. So he's doing it in stages. You know, there was a loyalty there for Motherwell where he racked up, you know, I think it was over 100 appearances, you know, and got his move through being patient and not just kind of saying, all right, there's speculation about it and jumping as soon as. He made sure that he was, you know, not the finished article, but an article that made a club like Celtic sign him. So I think if he's wise, he would dedicate himself to playing for Celtic for the foreseeable future. And if Celtic are wise, they'll tie him up on some sort of longer term deal, better terms and conditions. If he does play the Euros and star, because there's no reason why he can't do that, you know. But I think he's the kind of guy, as I said, he's very level-headed, he's very grounded. He will not want to jump straight away. I think he'll want to play for Celtic and establish himself at Celtic because Celtic think so highly of him. And I think he's very aware of that. And I think he knows that he can be a big player for Celtic in the foreseeable future. And that's where his heart and his mind will lie at this moment in time, at this juncture, regardless if he plays well at the Euros and regardless of bids coming in, unless it's utterly ridiculous and it forces Celtic hand. Yeah. You know, I think, I don't think...
Like you say, an offer that you can't understand, never mind confuse.
One of those ones, one of those ones, And I think that's what's uppermost in David. Can't speak for him, but I think that's what would be uppermost in his mind, making an impression at Celtic. He has a wee bit already, but probably not enough. Not enough to tick that box to say, been there, done it with Celtic. My next challenge is, I think he wants to become a serial trophy winner at Celtic and then take his career to the next platform and the next stage.
Yeah, well, I think that's a decent point. Like, there's a bit of me that thinks, I don't think James Forrest will leave until he's physically pushed out the door. Callum McGregor, I'm not sure if he's in the same boat, but either of those two going, you would kind of understand, because they have seen and done it all as far as Celtic are concerned. David Turnbull, I understand finances are a big attraction in what is ultimately a short career, but you would like to think that having not really won anything with Celtic, bar the Scottish Cup that he obviously was in some way involved in because it lapsed over into this season, you would like to think that he's going to prioritise winning something with Celtic within the next couple of years before he makes that move, like you say. You would like to think that even in this modern day and age that something like that is still important to a footballer, and I hope so. But thanks everybody for your comments on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. We really appreciate everybody getting involved. This week in particular, the support that the whole ACSOM team have seen across social media has been absolutely outstanding, and we really want to thank you for that. We're not going to touch on the issues that arose earlier in the week, because I think they've been gone over, and we're here to create a positive Celtic supporting atmosphere, and we'll continue to do that. So what I want to move on to as far as things are concerned with the Scotland team, I'd really be interested to know your thoughts, Tony, on the whole Callum McGregor situation. Everybody's appreciative of the fact that he's not been the player that we know this season. He, more than most, has been quite vocal about the fact that he's not been coached to a great standard. He didn't say it in so many words, but they made it quite clear that he didn't really understand what the role was for him in the team at various points throughout the season. I'll be really interested to see, because I think he will be a starter with Scotland. I'll be really interested to see what kind of player he is this summer, with a few weeks under Steve Clarke's belt, and with a bit of coaching there that I'm sure is going to be of a higher standard than he's received at Celtic this season.
Callum McGregor turns up in the Euros. Callum McGregor will be subject to bids.
Mm-hmm.
So again, going back to it, how much is somebody going to be willing to pay the Callum McGregor? And I say this often: you be careful what you wish for, because you won't know what you've got till it's gone. Callum McGregor has been in the heart of that engine room for so long that he's set his own massive high bar standard, and he's fallen below that this season, in a season what mattered to everybody, and he's become some sort of whipping boy for Celtic supporters, because he's such an influential player. And then we said it ourselves that we don't think he's captain material. That's an opinion that might not be shared by others. That's fair enough. But Callum McGregor's a baller. And, coached right and under a man, Brendan Rodgers improved that guy immeasurably.
Mm-hmm.
If it's Eddie Howe could do the same. So I'm of the opinion that Callum has to stay. But again, your hand might be forced by somebody coming. And Brendan Rodgers rates him highly, and then going back to it, does he feel that he's ran his race with Celtic? Because he has been a serial trophy winner, and he's been there, seen it, done it, got the T-shirt. But I would like to think that he wants to be part of the next revolution, for want of a better word, with a new management team coming in. But I think also as well, Callum McGregor's played a ridiculous amount of football.
Yeah.
For one so young. And I think a one-season blip in consistency of about 5 to 6 years. His form levels are staggering, absolutely staggering. So, and I mentioned before, I think I saw him miss a sitter once, and it was away in Borussia Mönchengladbach.
Mm-hmm.
And he snatched at it and he hammered it. And then every other time I've seen Callum McGregor score, he's placed it into the net.
Yeah.
And obviously was told that night by Brendan, you don't need to hammer it. You can be accurate by passing it, and he seen and he learned, because every other goal he's more or less placed, or when he's hammering it, he's hit it with accuracy, because he knows where the frame of the goal is. That night he just got back excited, he rushed it, and people got annoyed at him. But ever since then, I thought, wow, he actually took something on board, because you could see it. The goals he scored against Rangers at Hampden, the goals he scored against Motherwell in the Scottish Cup final, other goals. he wasn't hitting and hoping. He was hitting to score, and more often than not, he did. So I was thinking that's an example of somebody being taken aside and saying, you don't have to leather the ball every time you get in front of goal. You've got a technique that you can place it. If you hit it hard, make sure it's on target. So and he's got so many attributes. He's got a great engine and he gets forward. And I think we expected too much of Callum. I think a lot of people, as said before, that a lot of Celtic players this season waited around for others to dig them out a hole instead of digging. They looked around and thought, someone will dig me out a hole. And he just sat back and didn't dig along with others. And Callum was one of those guys that they looked to. And he was digging and running about and maybe covering for Scott Brown as when he played and the legs were kind of out, gone a wee bit. So a lot of people got in his case because he wasn't allowed to do what he normally did. And that was to get forward and be effective.
Yeah.
So I'm of the opinion that I want to keep Callum McGregor. And again, if he has a great Euros and he plays and he stars, he could be another one that could be subject to bids.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think there's suitors already looking at him down in England, and like you say, if he has a strong tournament, then that's only going to increase their interest. Jim, you've been in and out more than the hokey cokey. How you doing?
Last chance, I'm in.
Yeah.
We're good. Clear as a bell.
Are we?
Clear as a bell. Yes.
What have I missed?
Well, we're just having a discussion here about the Celtic contingent, the reasonably large Celtic contingent in the Scotland squad for the Euros. Looking at it, what do you think the chances are of some of those players having a significant impact on the team and hopefully helping drive us on to success more so than they've done for Celtic this season anyway?
I think Stevie Clark will stick to his tried and trusted players. I don't see Greg Taylor getting a game. I don't see Turnbull getting a game. I'm disappointed that Lee's not there. I said all season I'm a big fan of Lee Griffiths. I don't understand why he's not there. I know that divides opinions, but when we had to qualify in that playoff game, who did they bring on with 5 minutes to go to take a penalty kick? The first penalty kick. He's the guy. Who did we turn to in the Scottish Cup final? Comes off the bench, scores the goal that should have been the winner. It's not. He's the first guy to take the penalty kick. So why? And I know all the arguments about he's not that fit and all this kind of stuff. You get 20, 30 minutes out of Lee Griffiths. Because I don't see where Scotland's going to score any goals from at all. I think we're really weak up front. I think we're good in the middle of the park. At the back, we're quite solid. We've got a good goalkeeper, but up front, I really don't see where the goals are coming from. And I don't think we'll do particularly well. I don't have any great expectations about the World Cup. I mean, I'm a big fan of the national team. I hope we do well, but we've got some good players, but I just think we're a bit off the pace. And if we can avoid it doing at Wembley, I'd be happy with that.
Yes.
And if we do okay in another 2 games, then fine. It's a bit like, as I said, going to Ibrox the other week. If we can get out of that one without getting a hammer, then I'd be happy with that, because they're a good team. I think they're a good team. A lot of kind of young, skillful players, and I'm a bit fearful for that game. But it'll be good to play. It's just good to be there for a change. I mean, it's just a shame that no fans will be there, hardly any fans will be there due to COVID, and it's going to be not in one country and all that kind of stuff. So I think that takes away from it a bit. But I think we've managed to qualify by the back door on penalty kicks. So it's not as if we've been the Tony Haggerty free-flowing blah, blah, blah stuff. We're kind of doer, but we've kind of got there, so let's enjoy it. I know I don't look as if I'm enjoying it, but let's enjoy it when we get there, because it'll be good to see us there, because I'm that age that's used to watching Scotland getting to World Cup finals from 74 through to 98 with one exception. You were always there, and it was dead exciting. But we'd be good teams then, good players. And even though we did nothing, you were dead excited going there. Dead excited. So I don't have that level of excitement, but it's certainly good to be a part of it rather than not to be a part of it. It's just the same. It's a bit fragmented the way it is this year. But I think he'll maybe play James Forrest. He'll likely play Ryan. He'll likely play Callum. But I think, who else is there? Hendry. Hendry. I don't think he'll play Hendry. I don't think he'll play Hendry. I don't think he'll play Turnbull. I don't think he'll play Taylor. The other 3 guys will definitely play, I think.
Yeah.
The Daily Mail did the team talk anyway, Laura, with that article the other day, Okay the Who.
I saw that, yeah.
Picked that up in the dressing room and said, that's what they think of you. Go out and just, you know what I mean? Just go out and kick them, basically, you know what I mean? Batter them, get into them, because I can't stand that kind of arrogance with
Yeah.
especially the English media, that they just have to turn up and give Scotland a doing type thing. You know, I would just pin that up and say, read that, and that doesn't make you want to go out there and shove it up them. Then nothing will.
Yeah.
You know, I can't get that arrogance, and I know they're a good team, but you know, just be respectful. You know, we're there as well. You know, and we'll show you we're there.
Never argue with idiots, Tony. Never argue with idiots.
Ah, no, that's
Move on.
Move
on. We move on. That's what we
We
do.
move on. Well, Jim's back in because we're moving on and we're all that kind of stuff. But before we move on to looking with a bit of nostalgia back at what happened 18 years ago today, did either of you see the video footage of Brendan Rodgers doing his team talk at one of the cup finals on Twitter? Did you see it, Jim?
Yeah. Yes, I saw it. Yeah.
I was absolutely baffled by it, and just picking up on what Tony said about what you use for motivation. Jim, I'll come to you first on it. I don't know what Neil Lennon has said to the players in the dressing room this season. I don't know what he's tried to say to them, but I have to admit, for all the ill feeling there is towards Brendan Rodgers for the way he left the club, what an orator he was in that piece of footage. The hairs were standing up on the back of my neck, and he really put into context what it meant to be playing for Celtic and what it meant to be playing for that trophy. What did you make of the footage that you saw?
He was obviously very good, but I'm not so sure how much players pay attention to that just before the game. I mean, they know what they're going to do themselves. There's only so much you can tell these guys, and you've been telling it during the week. So when there's only 5 minutes before they get onto the pitch, I'm not too sure how much they take in. I think they will do their own thing. But yeah, he's good. Obviously, he's good at what he does, and it's just a shame we lost him in the manner which was. But I think we have to kind of look forward and not look back. I think that's the season finished. Yeah. Let's try and forget that season and let's look forward. And he's an ex-manager, and all we've done this season is kind of look back. If only we'd have signed this guy. If only he'd have been the manager. If only blah blah blah. It's finished.
Yeah,
I think we just, I know I keep saying it, but we just have to move on. Hopefully we get a new manager next week, and he brings in some decent players, and then off we go, and we get trying to get a wee bit more upbeat than we've been, because it's been a heavy season. So let's try and be a bit more positive and look forward as opposed to looking back. He's part of the past. Let's forget about him. Fantastic manager though he was. We do have to move on.
Yeah. Tony, Jim raises an interesting point there of obviously the majority of the work of a manager is done during the week on the training pitch and all that kind of thing. I disagree slightly in that I do think that there's a role for, if all that hard work is put in there during the week, then surely there somebody who can speak in the manner that Brendan Rodgers spoke, and hopefully that Eddie Howe will speak in going forward, can just add that extra wee bit oomph. You're a guy who uses your vocabulary extensively, so I'm sure you've got some thoughts on it.
Listen, you look to your leader at times like that, and he gets them all in, and the respect that he obviously had, he's just holding court. And it's Braveheart-esque. Someone said in the comments they would have ran through a brick wall for Brendan Rodgers after that speech, and you would have. But, I mean, he was just drumming it into the players. Immortality beckoned. Their lives would change forever. And I don't know any footballer that wouldn't listen to those words. And just sort of, you've got 90 minutes for your life to flip upside down, and you will be a legend. And to actually hear somebody say those words, somebody to break it down like that, to say to you, you know what, this game of football matters so much, and to actually calm you down and say, listen, this is what will happen. You're good enough to win. Go and win. And at that moment in time, they were wanting their manager to tell them that. And he did. And I always said before, I want people at Celtic in those positions to be statesman-like, ambassadorial-like, and to be of the highest calibre. And there's a few people that could have, I only think there's 3 managers that could have said something similar. Jock Stein, Martin O'Neill and Brendan. I think only 3 of them could have said that. I'm not au fait with managers from the distant past, but that, to my mind, that's only 3 managers that could have came away with something like that. And could have drummed it into the players what it meant. And I think I like Jim. I'm sad he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to move on. But as a snapshot of a Brendan Rodgers kind of, of how the team operated under Brendan Rodgers, then it was very interesting, and it kind of makes you cry inside. You know what I mean? You see, we let this guy go, but I think you look at that and you think that's pretty magnificent. It's pretty awesome what he did there, and how the players must have felt walking out onto that pitch in the cup final, and they duly won it, and they won it kind of within the first half an hour, really, didn't they? So
yeah,
they were 2-0 up, weren't they? And it was kind of game over.
That's right.
Yeah, I just think it's a bit unhelpful. We keep looking back. You look forward. That's over. Because you're thinking every time you see one of these things, you keep thinking, if only, if only. So I can tend to move by them because it's happened. And also to play devil's advocate with this kind of stuff, that sometimes you can tell players more than enough. You can tell that when he then says this is what this game means, some players might go the other way with that, thinking, oh dear, this is a real big game. Whereas you want to calm things down, just go out and play your normal game and do what you can. So I think there's kind of other ways of looking at that. But I'm going to move on.
No, I think it's a fair point. I think we do spend too much time looking back. I think in this particular occasion, it was just the first time I had seen that piece of footage, and it was this week, and it was just quite interesting because I thought, he's in the news a lot just now, obviously having won the FA Cup, and it was just proof of, like Tony says, the difference between what we've been putting up with and what we aspire our manager to be going forward, and you hope that somebody of an Eddie Howe calibre or character can come in and provide that for us.
I think it's fine to look back, Laura, maybe 10, 20 years to say those were the good times, we did this, that and the other, but that one's so recent.
Yeah.
And it's sore. And because it's so recent and because it's so sore, go on, stop showing it. Just Seville's fine, Lisbon's fine, 97, 98, Darren Jackson, all that stuff is absolutely fine. And looking forward to the Euros and Eddie Howe. Right. So I'm now dictating the conversation here, Laura. Sorry, I'm just want to move that way.
Right.
That's who I'm moving. Because I missed the first half hour.
Go on.
He goes fast as I can, Tony, as fast as I can. Hot legs, move on, death by 1,000 cuts, all that stuff. Bang, 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 bang.
Tick, tick, tick.
I love Darren Jackson. All that stuff.
Ding, 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 ding.
Ding, ding.
No, you raise actually, that's a good sort of segue, Jim, onto as much as it is going to be looking back, like you say, if we were sitting here on a podcast 18 years ago, I don't think we'd be sitting reminiscing with good memories on Seville, but we will talk about it because it is 18 years since we appeared in that cup final. And Jim, I will come to you first. Obviously a seminal sort of moment as a Celtic supporter, one of the massive memories that so many of us have, regardless of the result. Have you got any memories or stories from Seville that spring to mind when you look back on it?
What I said a month or so ago, whether it was that I'd have rather taken losing in Seville than winning 9 in a row, because Seville put us on the map. So I look back very fondly. I was fortunate enough to be there, fortunate enough to get a ticket, and it was the highlights basically of the last 50 years for me, easily, because that team and that manager, people came to Celtic Park, big teams came to Celtic Park and didn't like it at all, whereas big teams are coming to Celtic Park just now and just it's far too easy for them. So that was a team who didn't get messed about, with a fantastic manager. I think he's second to Jockstein, basically. Looked forward to Seville, went to the Algarve about 4 or 5 days beforehand, hired a car, drove up to Seville. It was phenomenal just to see the city and the colours, and everyone behaved themselves, which was important. And I just thought it was too hot for us, just too hot for the team. We didn't show up, and I think if even half the team had played as well as Henrik played, we'd have maybe won the game. And I thought at no point we were going to win the game up until we get the second goal. And it was a wee 10-minute phase. I thought, we could actually do this. But it was fantastic to be there. It was a fantastic occasion. All the games leading up to it. It was just a phenomenal time to be a Celtic fan. I mean, over the last 9 years, it's been a great time. But for me, personal opinion, not at that level. Really not at that level. And it did put us on the map. And that's what you've got to do. Because if you want to be thought as a big club, winning lots of trophies at home, for me, that doesn't cut it. But if you get to a European final, I think that's pretty good. If you look across Europe at the kind of smaller leagues, the Danish league or the Swedish league or whatever, I've got no idea whether their teams are winning 9 in a row, 10 in a row, whatever. But if one of their teams got to a European final, I would sit up and take notice.
Yeah.
And that's why Celtic are a big club, because of what happened in Lisbon. Because before Lisbon, Celtic were nothing. Celtic were no better than Hibs. Before the 65 Cup final, it had been 12 years since we'd won a trophy. Something like that. I think we won one league in 30 years or something. So Celtic were never a big club. But once you win the European Cup, the expectations go sky high, and all of a sudden you're a big club. So we have to be looking forward, competing at that kind of level, getting to the quarterfinals or the semi-finals of the Europa. I'm not saying the Champions League. I think it's a bit too much for us. But we have to be doing that. And for me, that trumps everything we do at home. And it'd be good to get back to that kind of. And hopefully, Eddie Howe, if it is Eddie Howe, can help us get back to that kind of level. Because for me, that's what it's all about. But Seville, fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Raising the point about Henrik Larsson, if everybody played even on half the level he did, I think personally, and obviously I don't have as many performances to reference as you guys, but it's the single most amazing individual player performance I think I've seen in a Celtic shirt. He did everything that he could to try and win that trophy single-handedly that night. And that's why he was so devastated, Tony. I think he was so close and yet so far, and that's where the satisfaction, I think, for a lot of Celtic supporters came for him on an individual level, seeing him triumph with Barcelona a couple of years later.
He was anointed that night, and I like Jim when it went to 2 each. I thought Larsson's getting a hat trick. We're going to win this. I allowed myself to think like that, and as Jim says, it's the best and worst feeling ever. It's everything I've ever wanted to do as a Celtic supporter. Be it a European final with my club. Losing, I've said before, losing's not in the equation. If you offer me the Champions League final now and somebody say, but you'll lose it, I'd say, nah, I don't want it. Because it's no, European finals isn't a stage for losers. It's not. But you talk about stories leading up to that, and I wrote this in the book. The night of the semi-final, I put a £2 bet on it. But I ran out the daily record office to put a bet on Celtic to win, and the odds were that short. I just thought, stuff that. And I put on the daily lottery. It's called the 49s, and I wrote 5 numbers down: 27, 7, 10 to 3. It was my niece's birthday, and she was born on the 27th of the 7th at 10 to 3. Wow. I ran back to the record, and I dialed the hotline that tells you the numbers, and the guy said, and the numbers are whatever, 27, 7, 10, 2, 3. I had £2 in it at 7,250 to win. I won 14.5 grand, and I was just like, wow. And my sports editor said, go down and make sure you've not made a mess of it. And I ran in, and the guy's like, it's you in it. I'm like, hi, it's me. And he's like, you're beauty. And I was like, back on the phone to my boss, and I went, can I? And he went, it's all right, it's already marked on the board. Are you going to Seville? I said, aye. So I flew to Torremolinos for the week, and on a Monday, you could just hear this, one of hoops. See, by the Wednesday, it was echoing all up the beach. Like, the place was just stowed. And I didn't have a ticket. Nobody would give me a ticket. And then my pal phoned me, and he said, look, there's a Rangers supporter in my work. He's selling 2 Seville tickets. He said, do you want them? I said, yeah. And he went, well, they're 500 quid a pop. I said, it doesn't matter. I said, I'll take them. I had the money. So I took my dad and my brother to Seville as well. They watched it in the big screen because they couldn't get tickets, and I went to the game. But it's the one result I've said in all my lifetime of watching Celtic that I would change. I just wanted to see my team win a European final, and I was utterly distraught, like Henrik. And I've mentioned that they cut to him, and he's holding a silver medal, and he looks straight into the camera and says, I didn't come here for this. And it meant that much to him that he played out his skin. He was superhuman. I mean, the header for his first header is just almost, it defies the laws of gravity. You know, just the way he got up to put it in. It's a phenomenal header, and like a lot of people, I've not really I'll never watch the full highlights back or the game back, but every now and again it'll appear on somebody's feed, and I still get that sick pit of the stomach feeling.
Yeah.
I can never reconcile myself with losing, but like Jim said, winning the European Cup put Celtic on the map. That's modern day historic Celtic starts then. You know, 'cause the club going nowhere, and that made you a big club. It defined who you are. See, if you look around world football, lots of teams playing green and white. It's no surprise why. Because this was the first non-Latin team to win the European Cup. This was a reserve of Benfica's, Real Madrid's, Inter Milan's, big clubs, and all of a sudden, sorry, they're from where? People were spinning the globe to see there, and they all kind of come from they all come from there. That 30-mile radius thing, a phenomenal. It's arguably the greatest achievement, or one of the greatest achievements in football, that you can fashion this team from what went before, a club going nowhere, and all of a sudden propelled Celtic into the stratosphere football-wise. Absolutely propelled them. And Martin O'Neill gave you that back. And for far too long, that's been missing from Celtic. And I agree with Jim on that wholeheartedly, that, yeah, he put Celtic back on that map. And you felt proud. That's why losing wasn't in the equation. And I knew Porto were a better team. I knew they had a manager on the rise. They showed it by winning the Champions League the following season. Just Celtic's luck to play a team that's on the rise. But, you know, they gave it their all. And a lot of that, I always get back to it and say it's kind of the most celebrated failure. But I get why it's the most celebrated failure, because it meant so much to people. But in my mind, it's still failure, and I don't like to talk about it, to be honest, because as Jim said earlier, it still hurts. 18 years on, it still hurts. But that's the thing.
I think also, Laura, you watch football year after year after year, waiting for the big moments to come. And okay, you win cups and you win leagues, but you win cups, you win leagues next season, and you know. Yeah. But to be at Seville, and when Celtic walked onto the park, and you look around you, and it's a sea of green and white, and it's roasting, and you think, we're actually here.
Yeah,
we're on the big stage and we're competing, and just to get there was great. And I've got a different opinion from Tony. Just to have got there, just to be part of that. Yes, it's sad the way it ended up, but I would gladly take going to get into Champions League final and losing. Absolutely, because it's just the being there. And in the semi-final, when Henrik scored the goal against Boavista, and then the final whistle went, you realised we're there. Yeah. We're actually there. And those are the moments as football fans you live for. And if you're a Celtic fan, because you're winning cups and leagues, you can tend to take them for granted. But that was huge. That was absolutely huge. And the fact that 80,000 went there showed just how huge it was. And it was just phenomenal. And yeah, it's sad to look back to see we lost it. But as you said, Larson was just unbelievable that night. You know, and although we lost, I think it was great being there. It was great to have got to the final. And it's a shame we didn't build on that and try and get there another 2 or 3 years after that. And since then, we've been pretty awful in Europe. And that's, you know, when we talk about, I know I'm going to look back, I've just said don't look back. But you know, one of the issues we have is the fact that we've been terribly managed over the past few years in Europe, getting to Europe, buying players in time for Europe. We need to sort that out. That has to be sorted out. Because Seville, for anyone who was there, was unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
My memories of it are, unfortunately, I was studying for my standard grades at the time to put a bit of perspective on age and things like that. But I couldn't wangle my way out, even though some of the teachers in the school mysteriously were off ill for a couple of days over that period of time. Who knows why? But my memories of it are, it's the only football match in my life. I like to think of myself as sensible enough of like, I love Celtic Football Club as much as anybody does, but it is just football. The only night I have ever cried at the end of a match purely because we lost the match was Seville. And Tony, it was the same as for you. I'm more on Jim's side actually, of like, I would rather be there than not regardless of the result, but at the same time I was heartbroken. I was so heartbroken. I just thought to not be too emotional about it. It gave me a kind of sense of this was our opportunity to be what the generations before us had been seeing Lisbon. This was our Lisbon.
It was our Lisbon, yeah, and that's why I say that you just can't reconcile yourself with losing. It was great to be there, and I get all that, but you have to win. You know, and I don't care how you do it. And people might disagree with that, but you know, it's winning's everything in a European final. It really is. I still, you know, it still gives me that horrible pit of the stomach feeling. You know, whenever you talk about it, and I've not erased it from my mind because it was still everything I never wanted to do. But I just sat there and I was you know, desolate at the end. I was just nobody could speak to me. I'm sure I remember a guy coming from nowhere and just saying to me, "I had this feeling in the San Siro," and I was just like, "I don't care." You know, I don't care because there was nothing anybody could have said to me after that final whistle that would make it any better, and nothing anybody has said to me since has made it any better. So it's just the way I feel, you know, about it. People can try and talk me around and say, "Oh, it was great, this and that." I get all that, but no, we lost. Move on.
I'm the opposite, actually, Tony. I'm actually
that's fair enough.
The opposite. I mean, when I walked out the ground that night, I thought that the better team won.
Yeah.
I didn't think we showed up, and I think if we'd have showed up, then the chances are we might have just sneaked it. But looking at the game over the whole 120 minutes, I thought the better team won the night. That's football. That's just the way it goes. But it was brilliant being there.
Yeah.
I don't dispute that. But you got to win.
I'm in agreement with Jim though. Like we came very close, even though we didn't turn up. So if we had turned up, you know, who knows what the result could have been. Jim, just to touch back on a point that you made about it and to relate it to the present day, that Martin O'Neill team, and I'm sure the Lisbon Lions, although I have no memories of them, one of the standout qualities of both those teams is they were never intimidated by anybody. We've all heard about Bertiol talking about singing in the tunnel before he went out at Lisbon, facing these like sort of huge Italian players that were heads above him in terms of height, and he didn't care. The Celtic team of Martin O'Neill were the same. They came up against some pretty incredible opposition and never seemed intimidated. Jim, do you think, and this is not to set you up for an answer or whatever, but my personal opinion is that the team nowadays seem far too intimidated by opposition, much more so than those teams of the past. Do you think that's a fair thing to say?
I think there's very few leaders in this Celtic squad, and there's maybe a lack of physicality as well. And that's the two things Martin O'Neill had. He had a lot of physical players, Bobo and Valharan and Big Mialbi and Sutton and Big Hearts could put the bit as well.
Yeah, we
had a world-class player in Henry. If you've got one world-class player in your team, you've always got a chance. So I think we lack a bit of leadership and we lack a bit of physicality. And I think those are the main areas that we have to, or Eddie hopefully has to look into to try and make things a bit better. And not to get bullied. And we have been such a soft touch this year. And Tony's mentioned Ayer in the past. Ayer's a soft touch, 6'6". He's got the physicality. You know, could be a leader, but wasn't. You know, so we need leaders. We need leaders, we need physicality, and we need guys that are confident. So if that's in their makeup, then we've got more than half a chance, I think.
Yeah.
Laura, you look at that era, and Milan came, Bayern Munich came, Lyon came, you know, Anderlecht came.
Juventus.
Juventus. Every big gun came, and you saw them at Celtic Park, and Celtic went toe-to-toe with them. Because we had giants in the team, but giants in personality as well, giants in character, giants in stature.
Yeah.
And you know you could go toe-to-toe with them. And at no point did I think Celtic were going to get beat on those nights. No, and there's a clip from the Lyon game. I think it's a goal that Liam Miller scores. And David Pleat's co-commentating. And David Pleat says that's one of the best team goals you'll ever see in Europe. You get the clip, go and watch it. And he says, I can't count the number of passes. He says, because it was zipped about, and then Miller scored the header. and it is one of the best team goals you'll see. You know, when was the last time Celtic put a team like that to the sword and scored goals like that? You know, and that's what Martin O'Neill's team did. They gave you your pride back on that stage. You were walking out there thinking, we're getting ready to rumble. You know, you're going to have to go something to beat us here. You know, and most left at Parkhead with absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. You know, and that's what Jim's alluding to as well. You know, he gave us that pride back on that stage. It wasn't a one-off. When we got to European final, but we took scalps right, left and centre because he built that team and he realised big physical presence. You know, there's that story of Bobo Baldi banjoing one of the Barcelona players in the tunnel and Rob Douglas getting collared for it. You know, because you're not going to point the finger at Baldi and say it was him. Baldi, that's fine because I'll get you out there. You know, so that kind of intimidation and stuff like that, just putting top-notch teams off their stride, regardless, and no amount of skill to go along with it, with a world-class player up front. You've always got a chance if you've got that at your disposal in your armoury. And those times were brilliant watching Celtic.
And that's why Europe is always the benchmark. Always has to be the benchmark. Because we're looking at the last number of years, and it's great to win cups and trophies, but beating Motherwell in a cup final compared to seeing some of those big teams off the premises, you know, Juventus beat it, Bayern Munich beat it, you know, brilliant days, absolutely brilliant days.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a positive note to end things on. I hope everybody's enjoyed the show today. We were conscious of the fact that we wanted to try and do something positive today, not to recycle chat about Eddie Howe, because that seems no further forward than it was a couple of weeks ago, and obviously to not give a platform to anybody who you know wants to bring negativity to this community, because this has been, certainly from my experience, I'm sure I speak for Tony and Jim, and that in the majority it's been a positive experience for everybody, and I hope it remains so. Thanks everybody for getting in, commenting, subscribing, viewing. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate all the support that we get today and every week. Thanks again. This has been A Celtic State of Mind. Goodbye.
Cheers, Laura.